Hi, I'm Joey Lott, and in this video I'd like to talk about social anxiety. This is by request from a viewer, and he wrote that when he is with friends or in social situations, he feels anxious and uncomfortable, and he does silly things, he says. And so I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to, certainly something I can relate to. And so I'll just share my experience and let's see if this is useful to you. So if I am feeling anxious in any circumstance, but in this case we're talking about in a social situation, then what without sufficient awareness or without taking a look at what's actually going on, then the tendency is to become tense and contracted and to create this kind of armoring. This is a resistance against the anxiety and the discomfort. And well, I'll get to what I think is underneath that in just a moment. But you can just take a look in your own experience and see if this is true. You're in a situation, you begin to feel anxious, and you then resist this anxiety, and you resist it through a contraction, a tension, an armoring, and you can feel this. And it may be very obvious or it may be subtle, but if you pay attention, you may discover that what I'm describing is what you experience. So always don't just take my word for it. Just take a look in your own experience and see if this is true. It may not be true, but I highly suspect that it is because this is what I've observed in my own experience, and I've spoken with enough people over the years about this, and there seems to be a consensus that this is what happens, is that there is this contraction, an attempt to protect yourself, and so this builds up the pressure that you see. There's the anxiety, and then there's the resistance to the anxiety. And we just think that the anxiety is the problem, but actually it's the resistance. It's the resistance to the anxiety that generates this pressure, and then we feel that we need an outlet for it. So then we do silly things, or we just have to excuse ourselves, or we need to drink a little bit too much alcohol, or whatever the case may be, in order to try to relieve this pressure. But of course, whatever the strategy is that we rely on, it doesn't really work, right? So my primary strategy in the past was just to tense up and keep it all bottled up and withdraw more and more and more until I was able to escape from the situation. And then I could just finally let go, and I would then do whatever I would do to try and deal with that. So in my case, it changed over the years, but there was, I would meditate, I would take a nap, I would shower, I would read, I would do something trying to let that pressure release. But of course, as I said, other people have other strategies that they use: drinking, or using drugs, or being, telling jokes, or being silly, or whatever. And eventually, of course, for me, I just isolated more and more and more. I didn't want to have any kind of social interaction because it was just too uncomfortable. So just recognizing that those strategies don't really work, and they might give a temporary sense of relief, but they don't really work, because in the long run tend to just have a heightened sense of anxiety in social situations. So what I have found to be much more useful is to take a look at, how am I resisting the anxiety? So instead of assuming that the anxiety is a problem, it's so natural to assume that it's the problem and want to get rid of it. But just seeing that that doesn't work, what if instead I take a look at how it is that I'm resisting the anxiety, become familiar with that, and then choose to let that go. So just to allow the anxiety without doing anything about it. And so this is something that I began to practice, and just as an exploration, not necessarily with the aim of achieving something, because I didn't really know what I could achieve, but it was just an investigation. I knew that what I had done didn't work. I saw that there was a general pattern that no matter what I was doing, but no matter what my strategy was, the general pattern was trying to escape from or avoid or get rid of the anxiety, or control it, or distance myself from it, or manage it, or whatever. And so I realized that none of that worked. So the only thing that I hadn't really explored, honestly, was to allow the anxiety. So I had to take a look at what is it that I do. And as I said, I found that that resistance is a contraction, a tension, an armoring. And so you can just take a look in your own experience. How is it that you do the resistance to the anxiety? So there you are, you're in this social situation, and you start to feel this anxiety, and then you notice, what is it that you do to resist the anxiety? How do you try to control it, manage it, get rid of it, distract yourself from it, do something about it? And you'll see that there is whatever the specifics of that are, you just become familiar with how you do that, and then choose to not do that. And this may not be something that you do perfectly immediately, but it's an ongoing exploration. How do I do this, and how can I not do it? How can I just soften this resistance? How can I let go of the resistance? Not because it's bad, not because it's wrong, not to turn that into a new struggle, but just as an exploration to discover what would it be like not to resist this experience. And then there will be, at least my experience has been, then there's just the anxiety. So there's this feeling. That's what it is. It's an experience. It's a feeling. There's sensations, maybe thoughts, but that's just what's happening. And then there's this compulsion to resist it. So the idea is to become familiar with how that compulsion works, how the resistance works, and just to not do that, just to let go and allow this experience, what's been called anxiety, just allow it to be. And what I found is that it turns out the anxiety is not so bad. I always thought the anxiety was horrible, but actually, in my experience, the anxiety isn't so bad. It was the resistance to the anxiety that was so unpleasant. The anxiety itself, for me, turns out just to be just what it is. It's just this sensations, feelings, thoughts, emotion, and it's when it's left to be, when it's just allowed to be as it is, then it's just sort of an open experience. That's it. And it's that openness or that vulnerability which this contraction or resistance is attempting to protect against. But it turns out that protection, that compulsive, habitual resistance, contraction, doesn't actually protect, and all it does is make life miserable. So this is absolutely is hard, it's challenging, it's scary at first, and it's the last thing you want to do, and I understand that. And you know, if it wasn't the last thing you wanted to do, you would have already done it. Because you look at all the other things that you've done, you know, this is the last thing that you want to do, but it's also the only thing that you haven't really done. I mean, it's like after a while you just start to see that these strategies, other strategies, don't work, and they're all fundamentally the same thing, which is trying to get rid of or away from the experience that's happening. And when you just wise up to that and tell the truth, you realize that none of those, no matter what creative variations you come up with, I mean, there's an endless, not an endless, but there's an awful lot of different things you can do. You know, there's a lot of different drugs, a lot of different types of alcohol. There are a lot of different ways to be the joker or the, you know, the life of the party, the clown. There are a lot of different ways to isolate. You know, you can exhaust that, but it takes a while. Or you can just wise up before you've done all of that. And you can just realize, yeah, I see the pattern, it's not going to work. And then you got to do the only thing, the only thing that really remains, which is the last thing you want to do, which is just to allow this experience as it is without trying to control it or do anything about it, which is scary. But in my experience is that it's scary at first and then it's delightful later on. If it wasn't, if I didn't genuinely experience it as delightful, I wouldn't encourage you to take a look and find out for yourself. But I do genuinely find it delightful. It's such a freedom no longer to feel compelled to resist my own experience. And I've talked with enough people now who have confirmed that when they do this, that, you know, when they take a look and they see that the last thing that they've wanted is to allow this experience, and then they just choose anyway, even though they're afraid of it. They just choose gently, bit by bit, to allow it, to explore, to find out what it's actually like. They've also reported that, hey, it wasn't what I thought, and it's a lot nicer than I thought, and it's a lot nicer than what I was doing, which was all that resistance. Does this mean that you will suddenly become comfortable in social situations? Not necessarily, but it just means that you don't have to resist your own experience. And the more you do it, the nicer it becomes. And who knows what will happen. But anyway, that's my experience. That's what I would encourage you to do, is just to take a look at that. And I hope that this has been helpful to you. If you who are watching this, if you have a question that you would like me to respond to, or if you have a topic you'd like me to address in one of these videos, please feel free to contact me by email. That's joeylott@gmail.com, JOEYLOTT@gmail.com. That's the best way to communicate with me. I don't usually see the comments left on these videos. If you're watching this on Facebook, then please like my page and share the page with anybody you know who may enjoy this. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel, and in any case, please visit my website, joeylott.com, and sign up for whatever free offer I have available at this time. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video that I make. Bye for now.